When nebulae is transparent and lies between the Earth and the master centre, it is not discernible, neither with the naked eye or with a telescope. Amongst the most sublimated forms of physical substance in solution are nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen. When a subforce, or even a stratum of 10 or 20 million miles of this solution lies between the Earth and Sun centre, and an observation of the Sun be taken, the observer is apt to erroneously suppose he has discovered nitrogen, oxygen, and hydrogen in the still atmosphere of photosphere, and if the solution contains iron or gold or platinum and other metals, the observer is apt to erroneously suppose he has discovered these things within the photosphere or atmosphere of the Sun, whereon all observations made to determine such matters require that the observer shall first understand what lies between the Earth, and that still at the time of observation. But some of these subforces in Etheria require 40 years' time in which to drag the whole length away from the line of observation, so that in no case is the observation of any value, even though it be taken the breadth of the Earth, unless it is a period greater than 40 years. But it also so happens that because when such an immense force is about passing from the line, that another one equally large and perhaps of different density of solution comes within the line, and thus may occur hundreds of years before a good view can still be obtained. Some of these travelling plateaux are opaque, so that the Sun is kept in a dim eclipse for a year or two, and sometimes for hundreds of years. Wherefore philosophers have erroneously attributed their observations as having proved certain gases and certain metals within the atmosphere of suns. The same remarks apply to observations made of the stars and even of the moon. In the case of light being manifested in a complete still magnet, the major retention is at the angle of the two legs, and the minor light of the terminus of the north or negative pole. But in an eccentric magnet or horseshoe, the two lights are manifest at the terminus of the two legs. A complete planetary force is a globe or nearly so, and it's manifested like a complete magnet. But all immature force, as in the case of a small comet or other force, will manifest light at both poles and sometimes in the middle, if it has attained to power to manufacture light of its own. In some cases, the comet or the nebulae is not sufficiently condensed to produce light of its own, but contains physical substance in a gaseous state, which of itself may have infinitesimal polarities reflecting the normal light of the master force. By observing the new moon, it will be seen that the light portion thereof describes a large circle, which is of more area than the dark portion. The bulge of the light side of the moon always points towards the Sun. It is an error to say that light comes from the Sun and strikes on the moon and is then reflected on the Earth. As previously shown, there is no such thing as substance of light, but that which is called light is a manifestation of force power. Also that the force is comparatively all one light with a central focus. The reason one side of the moon is dark and the one is because it has a positive and negative manifestation of the power, for the moon also manufactures its own light. As the moon advances to the next quarter, the same discrepancy in the two apparent sizes is manifest, and this continues until the full moon. It is an error to say that dark bodies appear smaller and light bodies appear larger because of absorption or refraction. The cause is not absorption or refraction or reflection, but of manufacture. Light bodies, so called, manufacture light of their own, ever so infinitesimal, which has an envelope external to themselves. The eye of the observer sees this as well as the physical body, and consequently it appears larger than it really is. The same rule applies in regard to the sun and its photosphere, and to comets and to bodies that manifest light. Suitable deduction must be made to determine the size of a comet. Shadow is usually divided into two expressions: umbra, as the shadow of a man standing in sunlight, and darkness, as the shadow of the earth in a cloudy night. Nevertheless, they are all but one and the same thing, but in different degrees, both of which are here included in the word shadow. In a clear night, when the moon shines, two conditions are manifest on the earth. First, that a shadow is vertical to the moon, and the light side is not as light as when the sun shines at noon. The density of shadow from sunlight and the density of shadow from moonlight correspond exactly to the comparative difference between sunlight and moonlight. When it is a full moon at midday, the light of the sun, so called, is no greater because of the moon's presence. Observe the difference, however, on any given object if the ray from a mirror facing the sun be added to the ordinary sunlight. Hence, it is an error to attribute the moon's rays as being reflected from the sun to the earth. If it be premised that the light face of the moon is not a mirror, but is opaque, observe the following result from the moon when it is half full. The half of the moon is equivalent to half a globe. If the light of the sun fell on the bulge, the rays thus landed on the moon would cause that part of the moon to be a trifle more than 4 times lighter or brighter than on the slopes. In an observation of this kind, and if the light were borrowed from the sun, 2 kinds of rays would result. The bulge of the moon would afford a centre for rays to emanate in every direction, and the slope rays would refract at the same angle as received from the sun. The fact is, however, there is no intense centre light manifested on the moon's surface in the place where it directly faces the sun. Hence there is no possibility of the light of the moon being produced by light from the sun's centre. The light of the moon faces the sun's centre, but the latter is not the cause thereof. The cause is in the emissions of positive and negative currents from the moon's force, and they manifest in the neg power of the master force. The same rules apply to all planets.